Cool. We are here. We made it.
We made it. Yeah. You made it back from the Midwest.
Yes.
How'd your presentation go?
That was good. Yeah, actually went really well. Oh, I just heard a beep. I just heard a beep. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard it too, but I don't know what that was.
Huh. Okay. That's weird.
Is someone listening?
Well. I don't know. That was bizarre. Dude, all sorts of stuff's going on. I mean, I come in and you're telling me I got double phase audio or something like that. What's going on here?
Yeah.
No, it went well. No complaints. No, I didn't look, I don't think I looked stupid. Maybe I did look stupid. And I was just blissfully
Everybody
unaware.
was whispering like, he looks so stupid.
What is this guy even saying? No, so it was good. And it was kind of fun, I don't think I'd want to do it often, but, being in a hotel, I'm just a hermit, I don't like to travel, but, it was making me remember during interview season, a while ago now, just doing that. But anyway, who cares? And it's just kind of fun, little solitude. Not that I don't get that already.
No, I really like solo traveling too. It's why I like doing long road trips by myself.
Yeah, hence the, musician.
Wait, what?
That was whatever. I mean, the pause made it seem like I was going to say something weird, but I was just wondering if I wanted to bring it up. Like that you had considered for many years, like 10 years, because it's kind of trite now to say somebody wants to be a comedian. You don't want to be a comedian, but you had, you had played around with the idea, but you played around with it before it was cool. In the trough
I was so bad at it. It was one of those things where I did it once and I was too bad and I already had another skill. And so it's like, I can't start at this level.
Yeah. But anyway, I was just going to say, that certainly is a mentality that you need though, the solo trip.
Yeah,
it's a very solo business. So that's the whole point of that whole tirade right there.
Nice.
You believe that?
Yeah. So Mr. X has a good buddy who put out some music this week.
God, you flatter that SOB.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to talk about that, but it's true. But we don't have to talk about it.
Are you
we'll
sure?
Move on. Yeah.
We'll move on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help your friend promote his music.
Nah, he doesn't need help. He's
already
bury him.
Very famous.
Bury him. Nobody should hear him. Nobody should hear Mr. X either. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, let's.
Can we finally be honest, Antushka? No, man. This week. I mean, Foucault has been honestly getting me down so many rabbit holes. So I have to thank you for that, Antushka, from the bottom of my heart. Because I've just, I was pouring into the untimely meditations, the Nietzsche thing I was talking about last episode, and David Hume's stuff. And anyway, I have a lot of thoughts. But I was going to say, I kind of want you to take the lead on this stuff. I feel like I was talking too much last time. So
Nice. Okay, cool. Something very silly just happened. I was letting my wife know that the pork has 42 more minutes in the oven. But I didn't text her. I texted a bass player who I know, and I wrote 42 minutes on the pork. He just texted back, what?
That's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Anyway,
you know what it means. That's what you should say.
You know what it means.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's some good pork right there, man.
Oh my God. I should have said, you know what it means.
You have a lawsuit on your hands. Just kidding.
Yeah. All right. So Foucault. So if I'm being honest, I only made it through the one of the two chapters.
Oh yeah. I mean, I got 30 pages into the other one, and then realized there was another 40 pages to go. I was like, okay.
Also, the first one was kind of hard, especially the Christian part. I had to read it a couple times, and I still don't quite get it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So
but I have a lot of thoughts on that. But yeah, I'm talking too much.
How would we sum it up? So this is the insane. So
yeah.
as far as I understand this chapter, it's kind of moving away from the kind of long history that I was talking about before, about the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and moving into the classical period and the shifting relationship to madness and the insane on a cultural level, having to do with a starkly different attitude about the way to deal with people who are considered insane. And then that attitude shift being the treatment of people and viewing insanity as being related to animalistic traits in humans, and then even prescribing that humans should be treated as animals if they are deemed insane, all the way to the idea that maybe that might be the way to cure them of their insanity, although it seemed to kind of be unclear as to whether or not Foucault is suggesting that in the classical period there was an idea that insanity was treatable or curable, but he seems to be setting the scene for how it sort of shifts into our more modern understanding of how to deal with people who we deem are insane.
Yeah. I tend to agree with a lot of that, especially the animal part.
Right.
I thought that was a really interesting point he was making, and sort of felt like it was a central thing.
And I think the Christian point he was making is a big point, and I don't quite have a handle on what he meant by it.
Yeah, well, so I think maybe one place I want to start, because I think you're also kind of fuzzy on this, is trying to understand, like, how to even describe it. Like, I almost feel like sometimes while he's saying it's completely different in the classical period, he's also saying they're basically doing the same thing, though it's just in a perverted way. Like, they're still like, a big point I felt like he was making is that they're still, like, in the Middle Ages, you wanted to sort of let insanity breathe and almost, like, let it get out of itself. And they kind of did that in a perverted way with the circus development in, like, the end of the 18th and early 19th century. So, which is weird. So that was like what do you think about that conflict? Where it's like, in some cases, I do feel like because you started by saying it's a stark sort of difference in how they deal with insanity. But in some ways, it's also like, it's not that different. It's just perverted. I mean,
I think that is kind of what he gets at. Because as you read it, he'll say, it's really different. And then he'll trace back on himself and say, but it actually could be seen as sort of the other side of the coin to something like that. I mean, I feel like he was saying that a lot. He'd say it, he'd make a statement that was sort of a direct contrast, and then he'd be like, well, but if you flip it upside down, it's not so much of a contrast or something.
And I guess maybe this gets at why he's so difficult to read, and why the sort of meta-analysis of his work is the social construct idea, because it's like, well, it's all, like, it's the frame that you look at it from. I don't know.
Well, because actually one thing that I was coming to mind while I was reading it was 2 episodes ago, we were talking about, maybe it was 3 episodes ago, we were talking about setting up experiments in a chemistry sense, to get a sense of, are there things dissolved in water, stuff like that. And then multiple people can do the same experiment. But part of the scientific process, sort of maybe the hardest part, is being good at interpreting the results of an experiment.
Right.
And I feel like all of what he's doing is just like wild interpretation. And so some of it's really interesting, and it's an interesting way of framing situations, but it's so like interpretation upon interpretation upon interpretation that it's really difficult to trace what he's seeing and saying.
Yeah, no, it's very unscientific in a way, which is probably what
I think that's it. I think that's sort of, he would be fine with that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, sort of, doing a little Freudian analysis of him. I was, again, reading his probably Wikipedia, and he was the son of a surgeon, and I think his brother went into medicine, and he also like did, I think, volunteer work in a clinic, like a psych clinic. So anyway, it's sort of like reading all that It's making me first off realize why he's so educated, as you could say, a layman or somebody who's not a doctor on the clinic and the workings of the clinic.
Right.
And then also explains, in my opinion, how, you had said last episode how you didn't get that he was being prescriptive about anything, at least in that first section.
Right.
I do feel like, though, he was prescriptive a little bit in a way that it does seem like he has an opinion, if that makes sense, in how he talks about things. And it's obvious to me that it's an opinion that as we've sort of leaned into reason, we've sort of deluded ourselves into thinking that it's superior when in reality it's not necessarily better than other things.
Sure. I think that makes sense.
And I guess I wonder if that opinion doesn't come from the fact that, surgery is sort of the epitome of the modern doctor in some sense. It's like very clinical, like very sterile, right? No, you have to. I mean, you have to be very smart to be a surgeon,
Right.
So often you get the best doctors go into surgery. This is just the reality of things. I'm agnostic on all this, right?
Right.
And they also sort of emphasize some of the worst attributes about doctors too, of like the know-it-all, and because you need to have a lot of confidence if you're gonna cut into
someone. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes sense why you're going to first off get people like that into medicine, and then get people like that into sort of surgery. So it's just all of that is just coloring sort of when I read his writings, and I just think about his own biases too. I guess is really the only point about that. It's just I just think something worth thinking about.
This whole book is a screw you, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I couldn't be perfect like my brother.
And Tushka, exactly. I should say one could look at it like that. It's not necessarily like that, but one could look at it like that.
Yeah, it's true. Now, is it better to say it the way I said it, or like more the Freud way, pipe and a tweed jacket?
Exactly, dude. I just went on like a 10-minute thing where you just summed it up in like one phrase, which is perfect. And that sort of also sums up some of, I think, my and maybe your issues with it. Maybe not. You don't have an issue with his writing, but yeah, it's just I'm like, you could sum this up and then. I said I was going to not talk as much, but getting to your inexactitude, I was thinking exactly the same. You were saying that he's very inexact about all this, and I was thinking exactly the same. And it was making me wonder, am I just ignorant, or why does like the field of scientific history not exist? Because you literally just need somebody to count, like, here's the number of paintings that depicted like insanity, and then you could do t-tests.
Right.
You could start doing ANOVAs and bring probability into it, and good old Bayes and all that. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
I don't think most historians do that, though.
No, they don't. That's what I'm saying. Is it actually seems to me like that's the logical sort of next step for history, especially as we accrue more evidence
to be like more rationalistic.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion, man.
Well, I think if there's a lot of postmodernists in history, though, they're not going to want to do that.
Well, no, but I believe that this is maybe me putting the flag in the ground.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Maybe I don't want to put the flag in the ground yet. We'll talk more. I'm a very sleuth. No, I'm not scared. I guess I am scared. Or am I just smart? Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, there's a fine line between
idiot.
Scared and smart. Huh?
That's true. As I tell myself, I'm the underground man.
Right, the underground
Dostoevsky.
man. Right. I mean, it's an interesting idea to try and do history. I think there's a question of why we do history. I mean, it's like, do we talk about this in a different episode when I don't know. We were in music history class, right? And the professor started the very first class by saying there's no such thing as a historical fact.
I vaguely remember this, actually.
It was the first day. He was like, I just want you all to know, like, you come into history thinking, like, we're going to learn what happened in history. And he's like, no. We're going to learn stories. Mm-hmm. And what happened is a much more complicated idea.
Right. Was this second semester?
This is first semester.
Oh, okay. So it was who, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. We should give him credit.
We should.
It's difficult if you're trying to be anonymous.
Yeah, I know.
But he deserves credit.
Well, I mean, you could give him credit. He's a public individual, and
right, sort of. Yeah. All right, Professor Crook, music historian. Yeah. Anyway, but I appreciated that. I liked that. I think there's an honesty to it, but I think also what it's doing is it's showing that, at least from his perspective, what I would imagine is something like counting dates and numbers of things is not really doing history in what the tradition of history is.
Right. Yeah. Well, the tradition...
Because that's like data analytics or something.
No. But this is the thing, is the tradition of history, yes, I agree with that. But I'm not talking about tradition here. I'm talking about...
Right, you're talking about revolutionizing.
I'm talking about progression.
Right. I bet AI could do that, just count numbers of things.
Yeah, it could.
Well, or it could do it wrong and we'd have no idea. Like, the other great thing about AI is it would say, there's like 732 wars that happened in the world over the past 250 years. And you'd go like, okay. It could be a complete nonsense.
No, and I'm not saying I'm not by any means saying it's a perfect science, because you still have the issue of how do you build, how do you group the variables, like how do you define a war, and all that stuff. So it's not a perfect science, but it's an interesting way to approach history, is I guess maybe more of what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
I'm being
I guess there would be a question of what do you do with that data. Because it seems like maybe like what Foucault is doing is he's doing that a bit. Like he references a lot of stuff.
It's always for predictive purposes. This is what all science is, just for trying to predict and better plan the future. So it's like, oh, well, when you see, like X amount of, you meet some threshold of countries that begin to put tariffs on each other, and then historically, this is what happens, when you reach this number, like 90% of the countries in the world have some kind of tariff, and we've seen this pattern before. Something like that. Just a very simple, I'm not saying a great example, but the first thing that comes to mind.
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, the predictive thing. I mean more the interpretation. So you get a bunch of data. You say like 30,000 countries, 30,000 countries. I don't know, 200 countries have tariffs. And then what? Like you can have all these data points, but interpretation is it's still the problem of interpretation.
Yeah,
and I think Foucault is doing interpretation. I don't know how much data science he's doing, but he seems to be doing interpretation. I think most historians essentially are just doing interpretation.
No, and I think you're getting at a very philosophical point, that everything is interpretation, which I agree with. It's the predominance of this is getting at the point. This is the fundamental question, Antushka, and this is what honestly got my brain in a heat this last week, because it's that when we were talking about going out in the cold and dying and what's objective truth. I think it all gets back to this question of subjectivity, and we don't have to go into that right now, but yes, I mean, I think it probably comes down to the number of, it's just always the more data, I guess you can think about it, the better, which comes down to why I was making the point of, like, we make truth with other people. And this is where I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it again, because I think I'm not very set in it, and it's a tirade, and anyway, we'll get back to... How are you doing?
How am I doing?
Are you doing okay? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Something that just comes to mind is I feel like there's a few statements that Foucault makes where he's drawing on data. I don't know how rigorous the data is, but when he says, like 1 in 10 people in Paris were institutionalized...
yes.
I mean, that's a figure he's putting forth.
Right.
And then he does, 10 pages of interpretation on that figure or something like that.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, exactly. But I'm not saying he should do this. I'm just saying it was making me think, as you were mentioning, the inexactitude of his approach. It does make me wish it was a little bit more formulaic. And this is honestly more getting into the second part, the doctors and part of just, he puts out a lot of prescriptions, and it's almost like I would like to know what maybe the domain of prescriptions for, and I'm saying prescriptions, treatments, I should say, for madness were of the time. And that is, I think, a more quantitative thing because you could literally like count, there's, I guess what I'm saying is there are certain easy ways to quantify history that you can start with, like just counting the number of publications that, used water bathing as a treatment, which was, a very popular way of treating mania and stuff. So anyway, I talk too much. Andy.
No, you don't. Wait. There's two of us on a podcast. You have to talk at least half the time.
I know, but I'm talking more than half. It's a travesty.
Maybe I've had good tirades and rants. I don't know.
You have. You have. And you made you made a really good point last episode when I brought up that objective truth.
Oh, truth.
And I was trying to rectify
hard,
that.
Man.
Well, yeah. I keep coming back to it, and I keep saying I'm not ready to talk about it.
You're very Foucault of you.
Yes.
Foucault, yeah. You make a statement, and you're like, well, actually.
Yeah. Maybe I am a postmodern person. I certainly am a postmodern person.
Right. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Okay. So one thing that I thought was interesting is I got the sense that Foucault was drawing some kind of parallel between evil and madness. Not that he's saying that madness is evil, but that there's some kind of tacit societal relationship between the two, because he's talking about people being institutionalized. And at the beginning of the chapter, he's not even really distinguishing. I think he even makes a point where he's not distinguishing just madness from, say, criminals and other types of people who might be locked up for various reasons. Having to do with something to do with society's relationship to evil. And then madness being related to some kind of evil, maybe a specific subset of types of evils.
Yeah. I remember him making those points. I didn't draw that conclusion. I think that's an interesting one.
So what I have highlighted here was evil in all its most violent and most inhuman forms could not be dealt with and punished unless it was brought out into the open. And this is talking more about the older style, the Middle Ages and Renaissance style. He's switching to evil because he's been talking about madness, and then he switches to evil. And it just seems like they're interchangeable at one point. And this is where I wish I was reading it in French because I don't know what the translation has done.
That's a great point.
But I think it's really interesting to be talking about a topic and you just switch the subject word like that because it makes you draw a parallel between the two. And so you start to associate evil with madness.
No, that's very interesting. And it also, this sort of emphasizes how we can read the same thing and sort of draw completely different things. Because I was focusing on like the drawing out of madness for the reasons that, I had made before, and then it became perverted by the circus. I think you make a really good point, and I hadn't really even thought about that. I think it's a very astute point about. I didn't notice the interchange of the word, to be perfectly honest, but it's an interesting point. Yeah, but I mean, I wonder if it gets back at this animalistic idea and the idea that sort of in the progression from the Middle Ages, because this is how I think about it, at least, and I feel like he kind of thinks about it like this: the progression from the Middle Ages into the classical period and into modernity is a triumph of reason, right? It's and that's why you call it the Enlightenment, because we're becoming enlightened and we're becoming self-aware, and I feel like consciousness is being elevated in a sense. People
he does talk about that when he talks about anthropology entering the scene, because then you need a narrative that's a progression,
right?
So all the way back from we were apes to then we were like kind of smart but kind of stupid, and now we're really smart. Look at how far we've come. We're big kids now.
I mean, we have done pretty amazing things. I'm sorry.
Right. I'm sorry. Why
pretty
are you
horrible
sorry?
things, I agree, but I'm talking to you on a computer right now. That's pretty crazy.
Right. How many other animals can do this? Like 4, 5, 6?
4, maybe 4.
Kangaroos.
Maybe. Pigeons, I hear great things about them.
They're great at networking.
Yeah, hey, man. Yeah. And yes, exactly. Though because in how I would interpret that is yes, of course, because as you become more conscious, consciousness is bootstrapped off of memory, and so of course history becomes a larger component of the zeitgeist as more people become conscious, because everybody's history is sort of multiplying or whatever. If you want to think about it like that, or everybody's becoming conscious about their history, because that's what consciousness is in some sense.
Right.
Anyway, so and then the way I think about consciousness is you are coming out of your animalist body in a way because you're able to reflect on it. So that's sort of, I think, why we've subconsciously thought about consciousness like that, where you have the animal state where you're not conscious and you're in the present, as I think about it, or you're hyper conscious and you're, as I call it, an insomniac fiend. Anyway, I've given away too much, but so that's why, though, madness, I think when he's talking about it being animalistic, it is, you're not using reason, you're not using consciousness, and you're just this crazy animal. And then we look at it as evil because we're constantly trying to fight that. As consciousness, we want to keep existing as a conscious being. And so going back to the animal state means that you're no longer a conscious being, and that's scary. And that's why we also hate death and stuff.
I actually had a thought when I was reading about flipping the narrative. I think the narrative could also be flipped in the other direction. And that would be interesting. That consciousness is madness.
Yes, of course.
And that the idea of reverting back to the animal state is actually not mad.
I think that's what he's that's, I think, honestly, what he thinks. And that when I was saying how I almost feel like he is sort of telling us what he thinks. Right. I feel like that's exactly it.
It's like this silly quote. I don't even remember where. It was like some Instagram, Twitter, like silly quote I read. But it was something like, focusing on the past is depression, focusing on the future is anxiety, and focusing on the present is peace.
Right.
Or like being in the present or something like that.
Right. It's very Tao.
Right, exactly. That kind of stuff. Right.
No, but that's I mean, I intend to write more on all this, but these are all sort of ideas that I've thought about a bit, of like this idea that the Eastern philosophies like Tao, emblemized by Tao, but you could also say meditation is about shutting off consciousness, getting back to the present for that peace. And then the Western religions have dealt with consciousness by leaning into it, and which is emblemized through like the confessional. It's like, think about your history, think about everybody you've harmed, really just become one with it and just lean into it.
Right. And the future. Invest, say, like, we project so far in both directions.
Yep. Right. Exactly. And so, and it makes sense then that you would have these two seem like the two fundamental ways you can deal with it. You lean into it or you lean back out of it.
Right.
But the evil, that's, I guess, getting to your sort of point, though, of how he is talking about that we potentially looked at madness as evil. I think that was my opinion of why we do. Right. Because it's,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think especially thinking about the older style of madness, when he talks about it's sort of like an external thing, maybe it's some sort of spirit possession or something like that, and then into what he calls the classical period, and then he's talking about the animalistic trait. Instead of it being some spirit that's possessed you, it's somehow you have reverted back in evolution, and you're stuck in the distant past as a dog or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. What's interesting is, to me, that is a very anti-modernist argument, which in a way I like. Modernity is a strange thing to me, and I don't hate it. I like that we're on Zoom. I like airplanes.
Oh, but, you're saying the Foucault argument.
I'm saying it in a way it unravels the entire idea of modernity, because I would say that what we were talking about just now, what you were saying about thinking about your history and who you've hurt and things like that, and then projecting in the future. I feel like the modern world is, that's essential to what the modern world is.
Right. Yeah. No,
and our increasing anxiety and depression.
Right.
I feel like maybe they're tied together. Maybe the modern world cannot be the modern world without ever increasing anxiety and depression.
You're speaking my language, brother.
Foucault, I don't think said any of that in the chapter.
No. But I mean, I wrote a thing called the pandemic of anxiety or something like that, and I talked about exactly that, or I believe exactly that is like, yeah, it's anxiety is going to be just a sub. What's the word? It's a natural byproduct of consciousness,
right?
And it's consciousness in its limit is
right.
Like the hyper insomniac fiend, you could say.
And it's funny because we, in a way, are very safe compared to any other point in history. Like we don't live in a situation where we have to worry about bears and lions very much.
Right.
We're not going to get eaten in our sleep. That seems very unlikely.
No, but
and that's like very scary. Like that, the idea of that you'd think would cause way more anxiety.
Yeah. Well, but I think it does on some level. It's like a low level thing. And this anyway, we could go into a whole thing about that. Yeah, because I mean, we have all these ancient pathways that don't just shut off because we live in modern life, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I agree completely with all that. I was gonna say something else, and I can't remember what it was. Anyway, you look like you have something.
Well, I mean, I have so many. I highlighted a lot in this because I think there's a lot of cool sentences.
Agreed.
I'm just trying to figure out how to put them in because like the big 2 points to me were like the animal thing and the Christian thing. And I don't know. We can try and tackle the Christian thing. I really don't get it. I really don't quite get.
Yeah, I have some stuff written on the Christian thing, so let me find it.
But I did highlight this while you're looking at it. In the human being who has become a beast of burden, and he's talking about a situation where somebody was actually proposing a cure to madness by treating human beings like farm animals, like beasts of burden.
Right, the Scotland guy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff that he was describing, I don't know how real any of it is, but it's insanely brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. In the human being who has become a beast of burden, the absence of reason follows wisdom and its order. Madness is then cured, since it is alienated in something which is no less than truth.
I think I might have honestly taken that exact thing because I was confused by that too. But I got the. Can you read it one more time?
Sure. I think I have a sense for what it means.
Go for it then.
I think it's interesting because actually I think is related to what we were talking about truth last time. In the human being who has become a beast of burden, the absence of reason follows wisdom and its order. I don't quite understand that end there. But madness is then cured since it is alienated in something which is no less than its truth. So the way I take that is, if you're forced to be a beast of burden, you're forced to deal with the truth of the fact that you're doing hard labor that is something that your body can't really do or has a very, very hard time doing. So you are faced to force the harsh reality of the earth itself.
I think that's exactly it, actually. And he sort of elaborates that in the next section on the treatments and doctors part. Because one of the treatments that, again, you could say this is the perverted way in a sense that they take the same ideas, but they would basically do like just hosing people with water, right in the asylums. And this came out of this anecdote that they saw a madman fall in a river and almost drown, and then was sort of cured of his madness after that. So it's just,
like, let's throw them all in the river.
Basically, yes. That would it started with, let's just throw them in or like dump them in water randomly. Or, I mean, it goes into the whole bathing sort of stuff. Yep. Everybody used a lot of different iterations, but I think you're exactly right. And it does get at this. I think you're right, of this question we were talking about last time of like, how do you, the way that you get consciousness and reason to occur is sort of get maybe acknowledgement of the most fundamental things in front of you are true, and the most fundamental thing you have to reckon with, like death. And if you think you're going to die, it could, I guess the idea would be snap you out of, if it's
Right. It's like slapping someone in the face or splashing water. Snap out of it.
Exactly. exactly.
But a much more brutal form. I mean, I wonder what the success rate is of that.
Yeah, I don't know. But
I mean, that's another thing that would have been nice. So when you're talking about data, actually something like that. So like there's this change in treatment style, and then what? Mm-hmm. And maybe nobody keeps that data. I mean, I do notice it sometimes. Every now and then, if I look into modern treatments, even there's not always great documentation on efficacy.
No, Adderall,
which is wild.
Whoa. Well, I'm not making the point about efficacy for Adderall, but I was going to say on the point of not being great records, long-term records, because like for this drug, changed usages. It like was a weight loss drug, and so I don't know, but because it doesn't seem like people have really published much on the long-term effects of Adderall. But I'm thinking we must know that when it was maybe billed as something else back in like the 40s and 50s and 60s or whatever.
Did it have a different name?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Is there literature on whatever that was called?
I didn't get into that.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know. Yeah,
no,
it's a good question. Yeah, exactly. It's a good. I mean, that's essentially the question I'm wondering.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and this gets back to the objective truth thing. But maybe we could cap the conversation with that.
Okay.
So like we don't have to talk about it now. We can, because I actually have some points on the madness of the cross thing.
Okay, cool.
And everything that too, because I do think it's getting at what you were saying of, well, okay, no, sorry, I'll just say the first thing. I'm all over the place here, Antushka. So I thought it was interesting because he's discussing how apparently Christ would surround himself with, quote, madmen, and the quote is, madness thus became the ultimate form, the final degree of God in man's image before the fulfillment and deliverance of the cross. And how the church found a lesson in the madness of man, i.e. guilty innocence of the animal in man. So...
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah. I'll start. So he discusses how Christ used to apparently surround himself with madmen.
Right.
So the quote for that is, madness thus became the ultimate form, the final degree of God in man's image before the fulfillment and deliverance of the cross. So this is where I feel like when we talk about, when we look at it from the context of consciousness, then it sort of makes sense in my head that they'd be saying like madness or a return to animalistic sense is the final form before you go in front of God, before you die, because you're sort of ripped away from consciousness and you're ripped back into the present and thus death. That's
right.
Death.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and then the church found a lesson in the madness of man, i.e. the guilty innocence of the animal and man. It's like they're innocent because they're not aware of the fact that they're animals, I guess. Maybe that's the only way I could reconcile that. Because I don't really.
I think the first thing you said makes a lot of sense. I think I don't understand what Foucault is saying. Like that's what you said about when you face death. So we revert back. There's the pork. We revert back, all through the animal form before facing God or something like that. I can see that as an idea. I don't understand how a statement goes, Jesus hung out with mad people, therefore madness became the ultimate whatever. I don't see how one leads to the other.
Well, it was
to me. It's you have to die in order to face God, and death is the reconciliation of yourself with the animal or something like that.
Exactly. I think it's an appreciation and supposed to teach compassion to the rational people around. Right. You could say, quote, rational people around.
Like you're going to be this too.
You'll be this too. Look at them with compassion. Also, there's some truth in this because we're all sort of going to revert back to the animal eventually in some way or another for however long, whether it's an instant or it's a long time. Because, this is something I've also thought a lot about, of how Alzheimer's, a lot of the dementia, in some ways you could look at it as just a very slow progression back into the animal form as you lose your consciousness, essentially.
Right.
Or you lose your consciousness very quickly if it's a sudden... death, obviously.
Right.
Anyway, it's very morbid, I know. I'm sorry, Antushka.
Oh, that's okay. You're sorry. Yeah.
I'm glad that makes sense, though.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, this is tough.
It is
Yeah.
tough. Here, I have a comment. What? What? Okay, to respect madness is not to interpret it as involuntary and inevitable, as the involuntary and inevitable accident of disease, but to recognize this lower limit of human truth, a limit not accidental but essential. A lower limit of human truth.
Yeah, I think it's still getting back at that.
Same thing.
The animal thing is the most fundamental truth and it gets back to senses, I guess you could say. This is where the David Hume, I think, influence can be felt of like,
right.
And in some case, John Locke and Aristotle, right? Senses are the most fundamental truth for all of us. They are subjective,
Sure,
but they are, if we're basing our reality on anything, it is our senses.
right.
And the mad person is reacting more to their senses than we are, I guess.
Right.
That's how I interpret all that.
Yeah. I think that makes sense because then, as death is the limit of human life, just like we're talking about, in the realm of time, sure. Mm-hmm. Madness is the limit in the realm of animality.
Mm-hmm.
And just as death had been sanctified by the death of Christ,
mm-hmm.
which
death had been sanctified by the death of Christ.
So my understanding of Christian theology is that death has been conquered by the death of Christ. Death is not sanctified. Death is like sin. Death is hell.
Oh, what about if it's heaven?
Well,
existence
it's not
is hell.
possible. No, because in heaven you're not dead.
Sure,
you have
life
eternal
after
life.
death. Yeah, I think
you will live again.
It's getting a little too semantic for me, though.
Sure. Well, actually, that Pentecostal guy I talked to last week, it was crazy. I've never heard this before. He said that before Jesus died, Moses and Abraham and all the like holy fathers of the church before Christ were in hell.
Mm-hmm.
I.e., they were dead.
Right. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. Too semantic. Fine. All right. So
Sorry.
sanctified by the death of Christ, madness in its most bestial nature had also nature had also been sanctified.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, but I can see that he's still trying to basically, in my opinion,
right,
make that same point of we're all going to die. We're all kind of crazy, maybe. It's like empathy, the golden rule.
Now I don't get the sense that he's saying that he thinks madness is sanctified. He's saying like in the eyes of a Christian in the classical period, madness is sanctified through Christ. Yeah.
Right. But maybe, and this is maybe where it's hard for Foucault to disguise what he really feels,
right?
Though, because I do feel like he's getting at some truths that I think I've been trying to get at too. That I think anybody that sort of dives deep enough into metaphysics is going to get at the fundamental, the thing Kant was responding to, a critique of pure reason.
Right.
It all comes back to the synthetic a priori, which are the senses. I mean, it's just whatever you want to call them. It's that truth when we there's something here when I touch it. And I can see that there's something here also. And I can smell that there's something here. And so all of these, and this is, I guess, maybe this is a good time to finally get to it. So we were talking last episode about this person goes out into the cold, and I was trying to talk about objective and subjective truth.
Right.
And part of me wonders if truth is even the right, it's like there's gradations of truth, and maybe subjective and objective is too limited in that it's truth is built off of just more and more iterations of something, but it is subjective because we have 5 different ways of determining truth within us from the subjective reality. And that's the point. So it's like we're more likely to believe something's there if we can also touch it as well as see it, right? So which is, I think, ultimately what I was trying to get at with truth is that it's probabilistic in the sense that you're counting up the number of evidence, I guess.
Right, I
on
can
some
taste
level.
it and smell it. I can't hear it, but I can taste it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we really know a couch exists if we can't hear it? That's the real question.
Yeah. Actually, I had another thought I'd never thought about before. The 5 senses. There's a good narrative. We have senses, and we've named 5 of them. We've numbered 5 of them. Mm-hmm. But like, so we've demarcated different types of sensory experience.
Well, I see dead people, so I mean,
nice,
I have 6
nice.
senses.
But you see, that's a C.
Yeah, but you've found a fundamental error with the movie. Call up Bruce Willis.
Yeah, right. It's not a
that man
6th
on the
sense.
phone.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fundamental error. They need a new title.
Yeah.
The expanded 5th sense. It's just not as nice, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but but yeah. I mean, sorry, but you were making a point about how we've numbered them.
No, I just mean that it's interesting that even that. So we experience our best way of getting at truth is through aesthetic experience, sensory experience of some sort, right? However,
if you're
even
an
that
empiricist.
we have to add layers of narrative in order to describe it, because we're stuck. So we can see, we can taste, but now we've also limited ourselves. Because the 6th sense, I see dead people. How do you describe it if it isn't sight? It's just a different sense. We don't have a way to do it.
We're naturally limited in that. And remember, I mean, we talked about this too before, is like we're always bringing back our scientific findings into an interpretable result in one of the 5 senses. And most often now it's visual.
Right. Yeah. We should talk about hearing a couch, though. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do taste as much.
No, but they used to do taste and smell like you would. I mean, in the old chemist stuff, I mean, this is how things were.
This is how a lot of people died.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, it all comes back to that, which is why I do think that it makes sense that I think Foucault would basically be in the Hume side of the debate, whereas Kant, maybe he emphasizes the other side, where it's like there is some kind of truth outside of ourselves. And then this gets back to the question of whether that ultimately means you believe in God, which I think it might.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I do think it might. I see the postmodernist movement as being nearly as atheistic as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this gets back to something you were saying. This is, I think, what I wanted to make when you were making that point about how modernity is just, it feels very anti-rationality or the rational approach to things. And
modernity seems highly rational to me.
No. The reaction against it,
I see. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, the Foucault this I think not originates with Foucault, but is you could say Foucault gives it the narrative it needs by pointing out all of these ways that the rational sort of approach is actually just as irrational as some other approaches from certain perspectives.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is it makes sense to me that there would be you see a lot of the thinking now that's occurring in modern society, the reaction against all the hyper-rationalistic thought would be this, of like, we want to go back to the animal state. We want to get out of the modern state. We want to go back to the land and all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. It just makes sense because, there's definitely a sense that we've lost something. But anyway.
No, I think it's great. I think it's a necessary tension that needs to exist.
Dialectic.
Yeah, of course. I think so. Because you have the folks like, good old Kermit voice, Jordan B. Peterson out there, railing against postmodernism, and he's talking about how it's hell-bent on destroying society and stuff like that. And in a way, he's right, I think.
Yes,
I think it is. It is designed as a destructive or deconstructionist to deconstruct the world of modernity. However, on the other side, there's a reason that it's doing that. Because it's not like Foucault isn't wrong when he points out the horrors of these weirdly hyper-rational treatments for mad people.
And where is he coming off the back of? He's coming off the back of World War II, which was potentially the epitome of rational insanity. I mean, the Germans.
It's true, although the communistic theory is closer to Foucault than Jordan Peterson.
But
I mean, because that's also agrarian, back to basics, back to the animal life.
Yeah, no. I agree with that. But again, I'm talking about what Foucault was responding to.
Right.
Foucault.
Sure.
I mean, all of those atrocities were basically happening or were not really known about, I feel like, in the wide public during Foucault's time. I'm not saying people didn't know about, the people starving in Mao. Some people knew about them.
I'm saying base Marxist theory. I'm not even talking about the horrors in the Soviet Union.
But I all I was saying, sorry, I feel like we're talking past each other. It's my fault. All I'm saying is Foucault was responding, I think, to the Nazi regime more than any communist. I mean, and you could look at communism, sure, as what is, but I mean, the opposite of fascism, I guess. I don't know. No, you can't, right? Yeah. Because fascism is its own thing that can be applied to either. Sorry, I'm getting tired here, and I'm being inexact with my words, and I apologize. All I'm saying is Foucault was responding more to the Nazis.
Sure.
All the atrocities that the communists had done, he probably wasn't aware of, even though you're right, there was Marxist dogma. But I'm saying the facts of, like, people dying by the millions, and stuff. I don't think that was common knowledge in the 60s and 70s when he was writing. I don't know.
I don't know.
In the West.
Maybe. That'd be interesting. I wish we could read about that. I would like to know what people know. I was listening to an interesting Michael Malice podcast about that the other day, about what did people know? Because Michael Malice talks about, it's off topic, but he talks about how coming from the Soviet Union, he finds it sort of offensive and strange how many people in the U.S. in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, mostly professors, but many educated people, would either shrug off the atrocities, say they weren't happening, which is the most common, or just be like, well, you have to break a few eggs kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's a good point. I'm making an assumption that most either didn't know or, assumed that was so crazy. But for all I know, they could have been disingenuous, right? Yeah.
So. I mean, well, because what's his name? Noam Chomsky came out publicly and said that the stuff that people were saying was happening in Cambodia wasn't happening.
Right.
That it was media propaganda.
Right. Has he addressed that, I wonder?
Kinda, not that strongly. Not for how crazy what happened in Cambodia was.
Right.
He was like, well, I was a little deceived.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point. And I think the fact remains even beyond that, though, that whether even the atrocities were happening, Foucault was in a he was in a group, you could say, also the intelligentsia, the French intelligentsia, the epitome of intelligentsia.
Oh man,
he was in that society, and in that society, for sure, it was more vogue to come out against the Nazis than against Lenin, of course. Yeah, exactly. And that's the only point I'm saying is what's he reacting more to? Mm-hmm. He's reacting to the hyper insanity of rationality that had just occurred.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the dialectic thing, that I guess that's, as I read this, I just think like it's crazy how revolutionary I think it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is. It's everything, right? Yeah. Antithesis and thesis. Whatever.
Right. And synthesis and hypothesis. And all those other types of theses. Break it up into
all the other ones, yeah. But I think that gets at something, We're talking about Hegel, right? Or are you talking about Marx's?
No, Hegel. Yeah. I was just adding other things into it just to be silly.
Oh, yeah.
A hypothesis.
No. But he does. I don't know if those are the names for him, but he has other breakdowns. Because that's the thing is, you're always breaking stuff into subparts and everything like that.
I had to rethink about that for the first when I was applying to Rice. They had an entrance exam, and there was something like explain the Hegelian dialectic and how it relates to this piece of music, and I was like, oh yeah, we did that in music history, didn't we?
I don't remember doing that in music.
Oh,
history.
maybe it was
Hegel?
maybe it was romantic with ARP. I thought we did that in the second semester.
No, that no. I wish that sounds actually. I wish I would have been completely. I mean, that's surprising that they expected you to be able to.
Because it was
know
how
that.
it relates to a sonata. Because there's all
Right.
these papers about how a sonata is the Hegelian dialectic in music form.
Wow, Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I'd never thought about that. Yeah, because it's antecedent and consequent phrases, right?
Right, and then they come together in the same key at the end. The
Right.
synthesis. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's cool. Wow.
Music nerds. Nerds.
Wow. Yeah. No, that must have been a different class. Yeah, I never took romantic. I wish I had, but I had a lot of other classes I had to take,
Right,
unfortunately. Which we won't talk about.
Right. Yeah, nobody has any idea. We didn't
Nobody
study music.
knows.
What is going on here?
No, never.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that though, actually, there's a correction I wanted to make that I misspoke last episode at the end, talking about. I said Nietzsche had worked with Goethe on his color theory. I was a mistake. I meant to say Schopenhauer. It's just we were talking about Nietzsche and
Because Goethe's way before them, right?
He's a generation before.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, he's 2 generations before Nietzsche. Yeah, because when Schopenhauer met Goethe and worked on his theory of color with him, because I was making that whole point about vision. Goethe was like an old man at the beginning of the 19th century, and
I see.
Schopenhauer was a young dude. And Nietzsche's highly influenced by Schopenhauer, which is why I misspoke, because we were talking about. I just, again, just need to make that clear. Also, I just need to go on record and say the most general definition of combustion, Mr. Antushka, is an exothermic oxidative reductive reaction. Okay?
Okay. So it doesn't need hydrocarbons at all.
It doesn't need to have hydrocarbons. It doesn't need to have
So
oxygen.
oxidation and combustion are the same thing?
No, it is an exothermic. It also is making heat.
So there are reactions with oxygen that don't make heat.
I don't
Wouldn't
know.
any reaction make heat? Probably.
Not necessarily. You have endothermic reactions that make cold,
I
so
see.
to speak, or the absence of heat.
They make minus heat.
No, but isn't that funny? We think of I mean, it's true.
Negative
though,
heat,
It's because heat is motion, and so you're just really slowing down things when you,
Interesting. Okay. All right. Fine.
Yes.
I'm
Submit.
confused again. By the way.
Dang it! Well,
It
go
didn't
take
hit.
a chemistry class.
I feel like this is the kind of thing that would drive me crazy in chemistry. This is why I did not get good grades in chemistry. I'd get stuck on things like this, and I couldn't pick it apart.
Yeah.
I actually had this problem in algebra too. I feel like calculus was easier for me because it answered questions.
Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, this. This is the ultimate dance that a teacher has to dance, is how much information is too much, because you have to kind of siphon it down so that they don't get overwhelmed. But also, you're leaving a lot of stuff out, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. Calculus answers a lot of unanswered questions, and algebra, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Or
because if you give them too
yeah.
much information, they're also going to realize that ultimately you're also overwhelmed and don't really know. And you're I don't know. It's a lot of shit.
Well, there's a bleeding edge everywhere, right? It's just how
Yeah.
long you have to wait till you get there.
Yeah. I made a mistake too, like many episodes ago, and we never corrected it. And I don't remember what it was, but you texted me about it. And I have to think about it every now and then, but not when we're doing a podcast. Like, I should say something.
Oh, yes. It was about. I bet it was about the women's movement. I was right about this. It was probably about Stanton and Anthony.
Okay.
You had said they were like in the late 19th century, early 20th century, but no, they were mid 19th century. Because Seneca Falls,
What? Maybe. Yeah, that could be that. This is definitely not what I was thinking about, but sure.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I probably said a lot of wrong stuff.
Sorry. Me too. But yeah, because Stanton was born in 1815 and died in 1902.
Who's Stanton?
She was one of the Seneca Falls conventions.
Okay.
And yeah, formulated. She was like a early women's right person.
Cool.
Yeah. Because, anyway.
It's in my text thread, but I'm not going to go back through it right now.
Yeah.
All right, so what do we do next?
Yeah,
do
1848 was the Seneca Falls Convention, and that was like Elizabeth Stanton was, I believe, one of the organizers.
Well, were we talking about like women's suffrage or something?
Well, it was, I don't remember why.
Because that's
we were talking about it.
1920.
Yes, I know, but there was, you were making some point that I was right. That's all I remember.
Okay, good.
Isn't the ego great?
Oh, I love the ego.
God, I don't even remember what the point was. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad. I just need to make those points about Goethe and Schopenhauer. Yeah, it's making me wonder what we should read after Foucault, because I kind of am wondering if it's worth sort of diving into the lineage of, like, I've been trying to, like, reading Nietzsche, maybe reading some Hume or something. I don't know.
Sure.
Does that sound fun to you, Antushka?
It does sound fun. I think the one thing is, we can break the theme. I like the theme of something that's more directed at, written as a history.
Well, yeah, Nietzsche, like we said, is following in that line. I mean,
Right.
You could say Foucault is following in his lines.
Right. So, like, reading like the invisible hand of the market or something. That's not really a history. That's more of like a philosophical text.
Yeah. So you wouldn't want to read those types of things, though, huh?
I would. I just feel like
interesting.
I like this for now.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah. Well, and certainly if you look at the numbers, Antushka, I think people like it when we talk about history more of the episodes.
Oh, yeah? Well, I haven't looked recently. Is it looking good? I bet it's looking great, right?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, we're on our way. That's all I'll say. I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool.
So should we do Doctors and Patients since you started that one?
Sure. I'll probably read on if we do that, though.
Okay.
To something, but I don't mind reading on, and because there are a lot of interesting things in that section.
Cool. What else do we have? We have the Birth of the Asylum. We have Division. I assume it's like a math chapter. Or no, excuse me. It's the New Division.
Yeah, I think it's just talking about how they divide up
right.
insanity and classify it.
Nice. Passion and Delirium, Aspects of Madness, The Great Fear.
Well, the Great Fear, so I think the Great Fear would be interesting because that could answer whether he's sort of getting at what we're talking about, which is what I think is that, like, death is the ultimate fear of humans and sort of the ultimate fear of a rational being.
Sure.
I.e. a conscious being.
Then let's do it. Let's do the Great Fear.
Okay. I was going to say, okay, sounds good. Is that the last one?
No.
Okay.
The last one looks short, though. We could try and do both.
Okay. Yeah, I might read on.
Okay.
Cool.
The Great Fear starts with one afternoon I was there, looking a great deal, speaking rarely, listening as little as I could, when I was accosted by one of the most bizarre persons in the country. That's a fun
His name
start.
Was Antushka. And Mr. X. I should put myself
right.
Come on. Who am I kidding over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's, that was good. I mean, again, I think the best thing about Nietzsche is he's just like one of the easiest philosophers to read.
Sure.
Because you're right, Foucault is just
difficult.
He's tough. He's tough to get through.
Yep.
I feel like there are a ton of other things, but that I wanted to say. I don't know what that
I heard
is.
that again.
Yeah, I heard it again.
You think it's like the CIA listening?
Maybe. This was kind of a general thing, but I had a few thoughts about the formatting stuff is I wonder if he was trying to make a point how in some ways if you look at like breaks, we're sort of confined to the page break as a natural sort of stop. So like what is the difference between just starting randomly in a sentence? You know, it just but then you could say, but there's a reason for the page break stop. It's because there's a page that you have to turn. Right. But, you know, it's just making me think how even though he's pushing back and sort of trying to show that some of these things that we have can be inverted and looked at differently, he's also still falling into a lot of the same, you could say, tropes, like looking at just history from the perspective. I
mean, ultimately, he's making
ages.
Rational points.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Which, so, yeah. But I guess his point would be like, yeah, man, but it's
yeah,
good.
man.
It's all good, man. And he snap a little bit.
Yeah, right. You think he was one of those guys? No, he's too intense for that.
They invented I mean, it's like I feel like the beatniks were trying to be like the aristocratic, like intelligentsia French.
But beatniks were dumb compared to when I say dumb, I don't mean actually stupid. I mean they were talking in a very different way.
Right.
No, the way he writes, I can even imagine, like European graduate students who knew in college that are they're really intense and they make very strong statements and you don't even always know what they're arguing about or what for or against.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, that's a good encapsulation of him. I would say that encapsulates our
we're more the snapping types, I feel like. You and me, we're closer to the beatniks.
Yeah.
I feel like we're a little bit more chill.
Okay, so in the intensity, I agree. I mean, I guess it just depends on what we're talking about here. I was more talking about just aspiration to intellectualism, and I don't know, like that idea of just turning everything on its head. And that's what the beatniks wanted to do, and I think that's what Foucault is doing, and it goes back to this. I think it's ultimately this continental, dialectic, if you will, that's always existed in Europe at least, and maybe is not projected into the rest of the world. Which is this the order-bound English and the disorder-bound Germanic or / French or whatever continental you want to say. Yeah.
I like how you said German / French.
Yeah. I know.
I hope we have some German and French listeners who will.
Well, it's so at least in just the last 600 years, it does seem like it's been a constant power play, obviously, between, not just continental versus English, but you break all the continental nations up. But then starting maybe with Napoleon, this is going into a whole thing, sorry.
That's good.
It's just a whole thing. Starting with Napoleon, he wanted to unify Europe, but the British essentially, with the help of the Russians, fought him back, right? And then the Germans came up, 100 years later. They're like, we're gonna unify Europe. And then the English, with the help of the Russians, we're like, no.
Yeah.
And now, though, it's interesting. We have Russia, essentially, hey, I'm trying to unify, Europe, but also, the world against, you could say, the Anglo sphere, which is now, dominated by America, but I think it's still, it's the old Commonwealth, if you will. And yeah. So anyway, this is just trying to account for obviously recent history. But
and this is all Foucault's words.
I don't even know why I'm talking about this at this point. No, I think it's just an interesting observation.
The continental philosophy and how it's related.
Well, and listening to this Napoleon biography and then the Lenin biography and stuff and thinking about the wars more. And then, Foucault, I think I was just trying to say that it's interesting that he still falls in line of looking at
the context.
At that period. But what the heck do I know?
I mean, I think I like the tactic of taking those longer views of history. I think we don't do that enough. I think we tend to look at very short spans of history. And we kind of get caught in the last 50, 100, maybe 150 years. But yeah, a 600-year span, we start to see some very interesting sort of repeated cycles.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, yeah, I think that's a lot of my issue with I guess if you want to say postmodern thought, but it does, and this is maybe the point I was making with Foucault, is that even he is kind of myopic in that he's responding to, he's not myopic, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of, I think, scholarship on postmodern scholarship is myopic in that it only focuses on the last 100, maybe 200 years.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all I don't even think that's just history. I think there's a lot of subjects that we do that where we get kind of cut off at maybe 200 years ago.
Yeah, no, romantic is, basically like anything in science, we don't really look at even 100 years ago with very much.
Right. I feel like geologists have that one down.
Yeah.
They look pretty far back.
They look back, but how much are they using? I would say anthropologists are the best because in terms of using old resources to make arguments for today.
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. What are we even talking about anymore?
I don't know. All right, so we're going to do the Great Fear next.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm already scared.
Yeah, is this chapter going to be too scary for us?
It might be, dude.
You have to read it with the lights on.
We'll have to wind down with some Insidious. Did you ever see that movie?
No.
You never were that into scary movies, were you?
No, actually, I hate scary movies now. I used to be okay with them, and now they drive, I hate it.
Like, because you get scared?
Yeah, it's way too scary.
No, be honest.
They usually gross me out. Like, they make my stomach churn, and, I'm just kind of grossed out by the whole idea.
Were you ever
scared?
People are
pretending to be mutilated and stuff.
Well, I mean, of course, there's different types, but I'm thinking Insidious is a particularly. It's not gory, but it is. It's always those paranormal ones. Those are the most scary, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Playing with the mind, Paranormal Activity. You didn't.
I don't know. Those scary ones to me is a guy with a knife is freaking scary. Like some guy comes into your house with a kitchen knife and is going to stab you 30 times. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, no, that's very. And
you can't fight him, and you try, and he's just fucking stabbing you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That sounds really bad. That sounds like something I really don't want to happen.
Yeah, true. I got to bleep. I just realized I said our friend's name. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's scary. But I guess
doesn't scare me. You can stab me all day.
Yeah. But hey, man, Casper's also scary. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay? People think he's just
the paranormal ones don't get me so much.
Really? Paranormal Activity was freaky and Insidious. I keep bringing it back up. But the reason also kind of funny thing is they used what is it? What's the word? Tiptoe Through the Tulips by Tiny Tim. Yeah, which is, it's just a very, exactly. It's just why did it take 40 years for somebody to realize this is the perfect horror movie song? I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Cool. I think we said it all.
Yeah, all of it. Cool. All right, so the Great Fear next, the scary one.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Bye. Signing off.